There is a madness gnawing at the roots of our modern world, a sickness Friedrich Nietzsche diagnosed with terrifying precision long before our age of hyper-rationality, before our worship of data over instinct, before we exchanged vital truths for sterile facts. This madness manifests in our unshakable belief that truth emerges from debate, that wisdom is born in discussion, that the path to understanding winds through endless argument. We have built cathedrals to reason where we kneel before the false god of consensus, sacrificing our most vital impulses on the altar of objectivity. Nietzsche saw through this charade with the clarity of a prophet. He understood what we dare not admit. Reason is not the voice of strength, but the weapon of the fearful, the last refuge of those too weak to impose their vision upon the world without begging for permission. Consider our modern temples of reason. The universities where thought is measured in citations rather than courage, the media platforms where ideas are reduced to like counts, the political arenas where the highest virtue is compromise rather than conviction. In these halls, we have enshrined debate as the highest form of intellectual activity, mistaking the exchange of arguments for the pursuit of truth. But Nietzsche asks us the dangerous question: what if truth is not found through discussion? What if the most profound realities cannot be captured in syllogisms or proven through evidence? What if, in our obsession with being reasonable, we have domesticated our minds into impotence? The demand for justification permeates every aspect of modern life like a slow-acting poison. Before we can act, we must prove. Before we can create, we must explain. Before we can live, we must receive permission from some invisible tribunal of acceptable opinion. This is the suffocating reality Nietzsche identified as slave morality, not the overt oppression of chains and whips, but the more insidious tyranny of having to make our case, of needing to persuade before we can proceed. The strong do not ask for permission to exist. They simply exist with the terrifying freedom of those who recognize no higher authority than their own will to power. History reveals the pattern with startling clarity. The transformative figures, the artists who redefine beauty, the scientists who overturn paradigms, the philosophers who smash old tablets of values, they did not wait for consensus. Galileo did not convince the church before declaring the earth moved. Van Gogh did not seek approval for his brushstrokes. Nietzsche himself did not submit his works for peer review. They acted, and the world adjusted or didn't. This is the essence of what separates the creator from the debater. One shapes reality, while the other merely comments on it. Our contemporary intellectual landscape has become a grotesque parody of meaningful thought. The so-called marketplace of ideas resembles less an agora of wisdom than a gladiatorial arena, where combatants fight not for truth, but for applause. Podcasts, debates, panel discussions, all performative exercises in competitive reasoning where the metrics of success are burns per minute and own counts rather than genuine understanding. Nietzsche would recognize this immediately as the triumph of rhetoric over wisdom, the victory of persuasion over truth. When the measure of an idea becomes its ability to win arguments rather than its capacity to transform lives, we have entered the realm of what Nietzsche called the will to deception, the use of reason not to discover, but to dominate. The will to power, Nietzsche's most misunderstood and vital concept, offers the antidote to this paralysis of endless debate. It represents the fundamental drive of all life, not to argue about existence, but to assert it, not to justify one's place in the world, but to claim it. The oak tree does not debate the acorn about the proper way to grow. The lion does not hold focus groups before the hunt. The great artist does not poll audiences before picking up the brush. At its core, the will to power is the refusal to let one's vitality be constrained by the need for external validation, the recognition that creation is its own justification. Modern intellectual culture has become what Nietzsche feared most, a priesthood of reason that mistakes the map for the territory. Our scientists reduce consciousness to neural activity. Our philosophers analyze ethics through game theory. Our artists create for algorithms rather than inspiration. In this quantified, rationalized world, we have lost the ability to think dangerously, to embrace ideas that cannot be proven but must be lived. Nietzsche's Zarathustra declares, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame." When was the last time our intellectual class risked such self-immolation for an idea? When did they last advance a thought that couldn't be defended with footnotes? The Übermensch, Nietzsche's ideal of the self-overcoming individual, represents the ultimate rejection of debate culture. He does not argue his way to truth, he lives his way into it. His philosophy is not a set of propositions to be defended, but a life to be embodied. Consider the difference between reading about love and being in love, between studying music theory and composing a symphony. The Übermensch understands that certain truths can only be known through enactment, not explanation. This is why Nietzsche insists that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. The creative act requires a surrender of control that debate culture cannot tolerate. Our educational systems have become factories producing what Nietzsche called clever beasts, people skilled in argument but devoid of vision. We teach students how to deconstruct texts, but not how to create them, how to critique ideas, but not how to bear them, how to win debates, but not how to live dangerously. The result is a generation of brilliant deconstructors and timid creators, of minds sharp enough to dissect every idea but too fearful to birth new ones. Nietzsche's ideal education would produce not debaters, but creators, individuals willing to stand alone with their truths without the armor of consensus. The psychological cost of our debate culture is perhaps its most insidious effect. By training ourselves to constantly justify, to always have reasons ready, we sever the connection to our deepest instincts. The modern intellectual resembles a man who, before kissing his beloved, must first construct a logical proof that the kiss is justified. This hyper-rationalization of lived experience creates what Nietzsche diagnosed as the internalization of man, the turning of vital instincts against themselves. Our debates become rituals of self-doubt rather than celebrations of creative power. Nietzsche's alternative is as radical as it is simple. Stop arguing and start creating. Not because creation is more useful or productive, these are slave morality's measurements, but because it is more truthful to the fundamental nature of existence. The universe does not debate its expansion, it expands. Life does not argue for its continuation, it continues. To fully participate in the existence means to embrace this creative imperative without apology. To will as the universe wills without the intermediary of justification. The practical implications of this Nietzschean perspective are terrifying to our modern sensibilities. It means valuing the artist over the critic, the entrepreneur over the consultant, the visionary over the commentator. It requires recognizing that most debates are not about truth, but about power. The power to define what counts as reasonable discussion. Most importantly, it demands that we judge ideas not by their ability to survive cross-examination, but by their capacity to inspire action and transformation. Nietzsche's critique extends even to science, our most sacred institution of reason. While acknowledging its practical value, he saw in the scientific mentality another form of asceticism. A will to truth so absolute it denies the creative impulses that make truth valuable. The scientist, in Nietzsche's view, often resembles the priest in his denial of the subjective, his worship of objectivity. his belief that truth exists independent of human perspective. For Nietzsche, this is the final triumph of slave morality, the conviction that reality must conform to our methods of inquiry rather than our methods serving our vital needs. What then remains for those who would heed Nietzsche's call? The path is neither easy nor comforting. It requires the courage to think without the safety net of consensus, to create without the promise of understanding, to will without the guarantee of success. It means recognizing that most debates are distractions from the real work of self-overcoming, that time spent arguing is time stolen from creating. The weak will always demand reasons, the strong give them works instead. This is Nietzsche's challenge to our age of endless discussion. Put down the weapons of argument and take up the tools of creation. Stop justifying your existence and start living it with such intensity that justifications become unnecessary. The Übermensch does not emerge from debate clubs, but from solitude, not from consensus, but from contradiction, not from reason, but from passion. In a world drowning in words, but starved for meaning, Nietzsche's message rings clearer than ever. Stop talking about life and start living it, dangerously, beautifully, unreasonably. The choice before us is stark. We can continue our polite debates until the last light of civilization fades, or we can dare to create without apology, to will without justification, to live without permission. The weak will choose the former path, clinging to their reasons like life preservers in a sea of uncertainty. The strong, they have already turned away from the debate hall. They are too busy building altars to unknown gods, forging new values in the furnace of their own becoming. In the end, Nietzsche shows us that history remembers not those who argued best, but those who dared most. The question that remains is simple. Which will you be?